Are you ready?
First down and 10 to the 19. Intercepted! Wow!
You think that you're better?
Oh no, they're gonna fake it! Schmidt's gonna keep it, and it's a touchdown!
Well, you better get ready.
Henderson hits the sideline! Travion Henderson hitting him like a slow bullet.
Break it down!
Welcome to the College Football X.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the College Football X. Because it marks the spot, and because it's what we titled the show, because it sounds kind of catchy, I think, doesn't it?
Well, it's all that money we spent on the marketing research, and
Triple X takes it in the wrong direction.
Yes, that is true. Absolutely true.
Consultants tell us that that's a really wise move on our part.
It's really wise on our part.
It's the OSG Sports College Football podcast featuring us, the online sports guys, OSG Wilkie, OSG Nelson, Brother Marty, me, OSG Phil. And we're going to talk a little bit about college football on what was one of the, I don't know if I want to call it the strangest week ever, because really on the field, there wasn't that much weirdness.
No.
But there's a lot of headlines in the world of college football this week. And before we get into games, which we'll talk about this week's game, the games that happened over the past weekend, and a little later in the show, we'll talk about some problems coming after those games. And in the second half of the show, if you stick around long enough, you'll get to hear us talk a little bit about what's coming up the upcoming week as we enter the month of November, aka the home stretch for college football. But before we get into games, I want to talk about a passing in the world of college football. I guess it was late on Friday when word came out that former Georgia Bulldogs head coach, athletic director, resident important person emeritus, Vince Dooley, passed away at the age of 90 at his home in Athens. And I know, Wilkie, you've spent time talking to Coach Dooley. I've interviewed him more times than I can count. John, same. Marty, I don't know if you've gotten a chance to interact with him, but he was somebody that he exemplified the old run of college football, but at the same time, as the game changed and as the game grew, he changed with it. And he always had his hand in what was going on, not directly, but he was just kind of the man about town, for lack of a better way to put it. And what a character and what a life the guy lived.
I was one of the three of us were lucky to interact with him and get to know him. I was around Frank Broyles a lot, being from Arkansas and covering the Razorbacks for years in the SEC. And really, they were the same type of person. Former SEC quarterbacks, Dooley at Auburn, Broyles at Georgia Tech, great college football coaches, Arkansas for Broyles and Georgia for Dooley, and morphed into outstanding director of athletics as well at those universities. So they were very similar in that regard. And I always found when I talked to Coach Dooley, I felt like I was talking to Coach Broyles. Very similar demeanor, rolled with the times, very intelligent. Both these guys were successful outside of football. And John, I don't know if you remember that time we had the book signing at the Georgia Tech game, 15 years ago, and we sat next to Coach Dooley and just kind of shot the bull with him a little bit, and it was one of those great experiences.
Yeah, it was. It was fun to catch up with him then, and there've been times where, and this was something that I learned later in life, was that Vince was an amazing gardener.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We actually, years ago, a friend of the show, Gil Tyree, and I got to go over to his house and interview him and take a walking tour through that garden at his house, and it was amazing.
Yeah. And when you get to, when you're around someone as much as we are in circles, and you get to learn about that second level stuff, and you get to learn about the stuff that's away from the primary reason that you catch up with somebody. For me, it's fun to hear about him talk about gardening. It's fun to hear him, when he was introduced to soccer for the first time, and he goes to his first Atlanta United game, and the place, literally, you had, I think it was a full house lower bowl. So you literally had 42,000 people barking when Vince Dooley comes up on the halo board at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and you have that kind of crossover of an individual. And Marty, there are icons that come across our paths all throughout our lives, and I think that sadly, when we lose them, that's when we remember the most about them. And it always ends up as that first level stuff, the second level stuff, and then by the way, the impact that those folks had going forward.
Yeah, you're not going to see somebody else with that long of a tenure at one university come along again. The only time I met him was in passing when the three of us were down at the Sugar Bowl. But still, what are the chances of somebody like that in this current climate making it that long with one place?
Well, he was the last of the powerful head coaches, football head coaches and athletic directors that morphed into that role, that could walk on water in the state that they were in. You look at guys like, Coach Bryant, Paul W. Bryant, and Darrell Royal in Texas, and Coach Broyles and Coach Dooley. And those were guys that could, again, walk on water and had huge roles at their universities. You're not going to see that anymore. They don't morph into those athletic director roles now, or have the clout that they once had statewide at their state university. Now, those roles now go to guys that went to Harvard Business School or the Wharton School at University of Pennsylvania. I mean, those are the guys that get those roles now. And he was the last of that group. And it's sad to see him go, even at 90. I mean, you hate to see icons like that go away.
Yeah, it was interesting that Bulldogs celebrated his 90th birthday on the weekend of the Georgia-Oregon game this year that kicked off the season at the Chick-fil-A Bowl, and he got a standing ovation, which of course he would.
Yeah.
That to me brought a huge smile on my face. And I found it fascinating today as I was reading up on some of the interactions between Kirby Smart and Coach Dooley over the last couple of years. And Coach Smart mentioned that every once in a while he would talk to Coach Dooley about lineups and what he was doing in terms of things going on the football field and how he was running practice.
Oh, yeah.
Which to me speaks volumes, A, for the respect for the coach, and B, that Kirby just somebody who came up through the Georgia football program, how much the man was revered.
Well, and think about it, Phil. This is a university that has lost Charlie Trippi and Vince Dooley in very short order.
In a couple of weeks, yeah.
Within a week.
And you have these two, and we can use the I word here. We can use the word icon and not be afraid to use it.
Wow.
They remind us of what we should remember about our favorite institutions. They're a part of that fabric that attaches us to where we are. And I think that, sadly, we forget a lot more than we should. And I think it's up to us as a part of all of this to remind everyone else why folks are important, why Charlie Trippi was important, why Vince Dooley was important, why all of these folks should continue to be a part of the fabric of who they are, and not just remembered occasionally down the road for some reason that's attached to something, but they're a part of the fabric, Wilkie, and the overall. And I think that's why we have to continue as a part of our charge to remind folks why these folks are important.
They also go back to a more innocent time in college football, really the time that the four of us grew up in. And, we're losing those icons pretty swiftly now. You guys know as much as anybody that I have a great deep appreciation for college basketball as much as I have for college football. And 2 years ago, we went through a wave of coaches passing away, guys like Eddie Sutton and John Thompson and Lou Henson, who were characters and really built the game to where it is now. And we lost a lot of those coaches, John Chaney, in a pretty short period of time. And we've been losing these icons. We lost Johnny Majors, Pat Dye, now Vince Dooley, guys that were powerful influences on young men in a time where it was a little more innocent, and it was the college football that the four of us knew and loved, and we see how it's morphed into what it is now.
Yeah, less of a business and more of a game.
Yeah.
And there's really no better way to put it, I think. But speaking of business, we'll move forward here. Again, hats off to Vince Dooley and to the Georgia Bulldogs, who, by the way, played their annual rivalry game this week. The Dogs going into the game with Florida in Jacksonville as the #1 team in the country. And they won 42-20 in a game that was at times not that close and at times closer than it probably should have been.
Yeah.
The Bulldogs got off to a 28-3 lead at the halftime, which, yes, there is some irony there. But a couple of mistakes in the third quarter and let Florida back into it until Georgia said, okay, go away. And they scored a couple of touchdowns in the fourth quarter, late in the third quarter and early in the fourth quarter, and then just ran out the clock. Game over. Georgia wins. It's weird to say this, but the game has almost been anticlimactic for these two teams over the last few years as Georgia's kind of dominated.
Well, I mean, Marty, Florida just hadn't been that good.
I mean, what can you do? Ohio State, Michigan was the same way, but, eventually it got spiced back up. When was the last time it was like a close game?
Mm-hmm. That's the big question.
At least over 5 years ago. But again, Georgia dominated the line. To me, after halftime, I don't know if they just lost interest when they went in the locker room, or what. But their minds were somewhere else.
CBS knocked on the door, and it's like, gentlemen, if you could please keep this competitive until past 6 o'clock Eastern time, we appreciate it.
Gary Danielson went down there and
they got his door slammed in the face. If it was somebody, Sean McManus goes down there, they'll listen. Gary Danielson, no, Gary, go away. Doors.
We're good to go. But I mean, that's what I felt. I mean, I just thought Georgia again dominated the line, got more chunk plays than Florida, and then kind of lost interest, and then snapped out of that fog and made it into a rout. But to me, those lapses can't happen between now and the SEC championship game.
I don't think
especially when you go into next week, which we'll talk later.
Mm-hmm.
It's better to get that game out of the way early than late.
Yeah, no kidding.
Absolutely.
Speaking of top-ranked teams, Marty's favorite team, one of Marty's favorite teams, the Ohio State Buckeyes, with a big win over Penn State, who put up a little bit of a fight. I expected this game to be a little bit wider of a margin because I've been pretty high on the Buckeyes this year. They've looked great, but man, in the fourth quarter they turned it on, 28-17, just in the fourth quarter between these two teams.
They had 2 scores in 30 seconds. JT, good, that kid had a game.
Boom.
Tuamola, oh my goodness, that one I thought it was going to be a blocked pass, and I mean, my wife and I listened to the game, and I've got it cranked up with the surround sound and everything. And when that hit his hands, you just heard thump. And I'm shocked he came down with it and had a pick 6. He had another interception. He tipped one that got intercepted by another guy, had a strip sack and a normal sack.
That all.
And I think 4 tackles for loss.
Something that has never happened.
Sophomore, by the way.
Something that statistic has not happened in the history of college football, according to ESPN.
Yeah, we've been waiting for him to break out. He came in with Jack Sawyer, who's actually local to Columbus, and it was like, which one of those guys is going to break out first? Because he was the top defensive recruit in the country the year he came out, but he wasn't one of those guys that came in spring. He waited to very, very late to sign. But Penn State, have any of you guys been out there?
Mm-mm.
I've been
You've-
by there, but I haven't been actually to State College.
That is the loudest stadium I have ever been to. It
Hmm.
is insane. If this would have been a night game, the that would I'm trying to think of a polite way to say this. If they
No.
have all day to tailgate,
Yes.
then it's another animal. But it is still crazy loud there. And after Ohio State lost Mayan Williams, who's, to be honest with you, he's been their better running back. They call him Pork Chop. And he's just a little wrecking ball. He was, when he came to Ohio State, he was like their consolation prize, because they had missed out to the point where the running backs coach was on the hot seat. And once he went out, that kind of threw off their running game a good bit.
Well, I thought Penn State played about as good as they can play. It's just Ohio State just has that far much more talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball, than Penn State did. And I thought toward as the game dragged on, just really dictated the terms toward the end. So yeah, it's a great effort by the Buckeyes.
Yeah, I wonder what's going on with their coach, Phil's stunt double. They stopped showing him towards the fourth quarter. Because I saw him from halftime through the third quarter. He was in a lot of the referees' ears, and then they kind of stopped showing him on the sideline.
They reached their quota.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, he does
Producer's got the checklist next to him.
exactly. He sit there. It's like, okay, so we had the over under of 2.5 of showing the coach. It's like, okay, we did that. We move on to the next one. It's like, okay,
Daddy needs a new pair of shoes.
cheerleaders.
Oh, we've already gone past our limit. We got to go move on to something else now.
We got to hit something else on the list.
We got to show James Franklin.
Yes. James Franklin looking studious. Okay, so 1, 2. All right, so we got
Whining to referee. Don't forget that one. He always does that. Every time you see it going in the tunnel at halftime, he's like got a hand on a guy's shoulder, and he's like,
that.
Holy crap.
not
I
as
just
bad as the
saw
Joe
it.
Paterno halftime one, but
And I just saw one of the more incredible plays by a defensive lineman I've ever seen.
And the thing, Marty, is what you got to understand, Marty, is that we have to have things done a certain way. Especially you have to pay attention to the officiating and make sure that they have to be done right. This has to be done the Penn State way. That's what we're doing.
the
Dude,
Penn
you gotta
State
have
way of Joe Paterno going to halftime early with blue khakis on, and then coming out for the second half with brown khakis on. It was probably my favorite.
Yeah.
Let's not.
Wow. Wow.
John, that impression would be stronger if you had the Coke bottle glasses.
Absolutely true.
That's true.
Yeah. So think of it as like a high pitched Columbo. That's Joe Paterno.
Yeah.
A high pitched Columbo.
Without the rain jacket,
Yes.
Changing the subject quickly and moving on.
of course.
Steer off.
The Tennessee Volunteers, statement win for them, as to say that they throttled Kentucky would probably be a polite.
That was impressive
Yeah.
performance by Tennessee.
44-6 in a game that really wasn't even that close. The Volunteers just dominated Kentucky in every aspect of the game on Saturday, and this was a game at least I thought was going to be a little bit closer and possibly a trap game.
Yeah.
That proved not to be true.
Now, as the game wore on, especially in the first quarter, I got Tennessee's got this one. They were just so dominant again in every phase of the game. Hendon Hooker right now is my favorite for the Heisman Trophy. I mean, he is the guy right now that definitely has earned his invite to New York. But to me right now, he's the favorite. He fits right in. He's making all the right decisions. He's got a great supporting cast. And he's got the Volunteers undefeated and a chance to go to the title game. We'll talk about next week's game a little later. But to me, Hendon Hooker is the front runner for the Heisman.
Okay.
Going out on a limb.
No, I don't think that that's as far a limb as a lot of folks would have thought originally. I think at the beginning of the year, sure. But as the season has evolved, I think we've seen what Josh Heupel can do for quarterbacks. I think that the true test for Tennessee will be the second time through the lineup. I think this season, everybody's trying to figure out, okay, what is, Tennessee is coming at us with all of these weapons. What happens next year when those weapons get replaced? Is this a system that is functioning this way, or was it those particular athletes this season in that system? That for me is going to be the true test for Tennessee. But yeah, this year, don't be surprised by anything that Tennessee accomplishes, especially offensively.
Okay. Should be interesting as we move here forward on the show. Another game of some interest, to me at least, is what the heck happened to Oklahoma State? They were the ninth team ranked ninth in the country. They were 6-1 going into a matchup with a banged up Kansas State team playing a backup quarterback, and they didn't just get beat. They got beat 48-0.
Bye-bye.
They
Well,
might
Case-
be missing their D coordinator.
Yeah. Did you guys see now? Did you guys see late in the game when Mike Gundy put in his freshman son at quarterback?
Yeah.
You're down late, and then there was the close up of his son's hands. I mean, literally, there was, and it's out there on social media. So if anybody's missed it, literally, you have Mike Gundy's son, and they were right like our shots are with us. Literally in a shotgun formation, his hands were shaking. Literally, he was that nervous as to what was going. Literally, close up is out there, so look up that particular shot. But just to see in a game like that is so out of hand, you send your freshman son in as a quarterback, and just he's looking around like this, and those hands are just shaking, and you're going, oh my God, he is completely and totally afraid of what's going on right now, or he's so amped up on a Monster and Red Bull that he's itchy to try to do something. I think it's the former more than the latter, but yeah, it was just one of those telling scenes of the day where you have a Gundy whose hands are going like this as he's about ready to get a snap late in the fourth quarter. No contest whatsoever.
Well, I'm sure Daddy's going to have a nice little meeting with the defensive coordinator for the OSU Cowboys, because Will Howard just shredded him during the game. And I watched a good bit of this game. And but Deuce Vaughn just impressed the heck out of me. He was getting chunk yardage on each carry. OSU just looked so uninspired defensively, and it carried over to the offense because Spencer Sanders just didn't do anything. And I think OSU's got some soul searching to do this week because of that they had a chance. OSU had a chance to be the class of the Big 12. But I really think that TCU loss a few weeks ago really took a lot of the air out of the wind out of the sails for the Cowboys, and they just haven't recovered. I mean, they've looked lackluster since.
Yeah. But then, all right. So then, Marty, let me ask you this. How much of this is on the core? Is this one of those situations for Oklahoma State for the rest of the year where the coordinators get changed, Mike Gundy gets the one more year, or does this go straight to the top for you?
I think they're going to give him a little bit of a benefit because if you take a look at what that coordinator is doing at his new stop, and he completely changed that whole defense. Like Ohio State was way down here on defense, and now they're creeping up towards the top. That might buy him one coordinator, and he's going to have to nail that hire or he's done.
I think that's, I just wondered the level of impatience. Is this the year where the coordinators get swept out? And yes, we're having a change in philosophy. We're looking at ourselves internally, and the buck ends with me, but the coordinator fired. And then
Jim Knowles was the defensive coordinator at Oklahoma, and he had a pretty stout reputation when he took the job at Stillwater. And he's done some really, I thought he's done some good things with that defense, especially last year. But this year, I mean, they just looked uninspired.
Mm-hmm. And you can't have that.
He's gone. Didn't he take the job over the summer?
I mean,
I don't remember.
But you can't have that kind of uninspiredness, especially with a new television contract coming down the pike.
Yeah.
Worth
billions.
You can't have that. You cannot have uninspired, especially when you're nationally ranked. And that's why I wanted to pose the question. Does it go straight to Gundy, or does this go coordinator? And then Gundy makes the hire that Marty says he's got to
Marty, you're right. It's Derek Mason. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say,
failed me.
I think Ohio State bought that guy last year.
Yeah, Google failed me.
What this also does is it puts TCU completely in the driver's seat for the Big 12. Right now, they're 8-0, 5-0 in the Big 12, and pretty much 2 games up on everybody.
Yeah.
And I tell you guys, I like the Horned Frogs and what they're doing. again, I almost called Sonny Dykes his dad's name, Spike Dykes. I really like what he's done in Fort Worth, and they, yeah, you're right. They're the class of the Big 12 right now, and I see them. If they keep this up, because obviously Ohio State and Michigan are going to play, and Georgia, Tennessee tomorrow. I mean, all they have to do is hold serve, and they can get a playoff bid.
All hail Hypnotoad. That is all that I have to say.
Just leave those awful blood jerseys at home. Those are the worst things I've ever seen.
Before we wrap up here in the first half of the show, guys, I want to talk about briefly two games that had, I don't know if I would call it a level of irony to them, but a level of strangeness to them. One is saying that UConn beat Boston College.
That's nuts.
13-3.
They win next week. They're bowl eligible.
Well,
Jim
no,
Mora, the magic of Mora.
Maybe Jim Mora could coach. Who knew?
In the Northeast.
He's made UConn competitive. Boston College, that's a different issue and probably a much bigger problem. And the other game I wanted to get your thoughts on, a 4 overtime matchup in Virginia featuring the Virginia and Miami, won by the Hurricanes 14-12.
Yes, Wilkie, please, the ACC expert among the four of us, please explain this one.
I can't explain this one. I just cannot explain this one. I mean, this goes beyond explaining. I mean, neither team could get in the end zone.
The only thing that popped into my head was that they were all trying to do the offensive coordinators were trying to do their Brian Ferentz imitations. I don't know.
It was 3-2 all over again.
How does each team go 4 overtimes and only have 15 completions each passing the ball?
They're both awful. That's how.
What's even worse, there were 0 turnovers in the game.
How many?
Marty, I'm looking at this box score.
Many,
it's just sad.
How many punts, Marty? How many punts?
The punter from Miami had more yards than the team had.
Oh, jeez.
The punter from Miami, Lou Headley, punted 8 times for 308 yards.
Headley.
Both kickers were 4 for 4, though, so they're,
the Hurricanes
positive outcome, positive outline there.
Scrounge up 272 yards.
So Miami had 308 yards punting, and Virginia had 262.
Those punters don't need to go to the NFL Combine now. They got good tape on them.
Punting.
There's your tape.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting to me is Tony Elliott was the offensive coordinator at Clemson, and he obviously doesn't have the type of players he needs at Virginia to score points. And then Josh Gaddis is the OC at Miami, and obviously Miami's just a dearth of offensive players, so we get football set back 100 years.
They both need to be relegated to the Southern Conference. I'm sorry.
Is that where the ACC teams get relegated to?
What's the close? I mean, the Colonial? Is it the Colonial? I guess the
Colonial would be better. Yeah.
SEC would be the SoCon, and the Colonial would be attached to the ACC. So do that. Both of them relegated. Let me really quickly.
I was going to make fun of the Big 12, but it's probably, kicking, punching below.
Yeah.
It's definitely punching down.
The worst Big 12 game couldn't be that bad.
Yeah. All right. So let me look at the standings in the Colonial really quickly, Phil, before you go to break. So then it would be, okay, so if Miami and Virginia both get relegated, right now that would mean that it's some combination. Well, because it would be New Hampshire, who's 5-0. So they would be in the would they be in the Atlantic? Would they be the one to take over for Virginia, I guess?
Atlantic's in or Virginia's in the coastal. So they'd have to go coastal.
Okay, so then
there's a whole different.
Well, it wouldn't matter next year because the ACC is going.
Yeah, they're going no divisions. Yeah.
They're
Okay,
losing the divisional format.
All right. So right now it would be New Hampshire or either William and Mary or Richmond. Those would be your three choices because William and Mary and Richmond right now are tied at 4-1. So New Hampshire, and then either William and Mary or Richmond be promoted from the Colonial, relegated to the Colonial would be Miami and Virginia. There's your solution.
Oh,
Conference USA has plenty of seats open.
Oh, that's
hey, Kennesaw State's going to be joining them really soon.
yeah, but they need to. They're going to have to expand their stadium, and they know that they have to, among other things. True.
Guys,
And by the way, let's show some love for Illinois. The Fighting Bielemas are in first place in the Big Ten West. Who knew? And Tommy DeVito, who I think went to Syracuse, went somewhere else. Now he's at Illinois. I think he's 35 years old now. Big game for him. I covered their offensive coordinator, Barry Lunny, for years in high school football and in Arkansas. So hats off to Brett Bielema, who has proved that the only place he can coach is the Big Ten.
Hey, everybody's got to have a home someplace.
Yep.
And for him, that's up there in the northern part of the Midwest. Guys, let's throw it to break here. We've talked long enough in the first half of the show. When we come back in the second half of the show, I want to talk about a few off-the-field issues that cropped up this weekend. And we'll go through what promises to be probably a game-changing week as the first college football playoff poll comes out. All that and more when we come back for the second half of the X. You are listening to the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. Marty, your cue.
Please like and subscribe.
Hey, what's up? This is Darius Rucker. There are thousands of homeless veterans on the streets of our nation tonight. They're waiting for housing they are already approved for, but need the rental deposit to get into their home. Join VeteransMatter.org and help house 1,000 veterans as quickly as possible. Text VETS to 41444 and pledge any amount. Text VETS to 41444. They fought for us, now we fight for them. Veterans Matter.
Warning. Orthopedic surgeons are seeing an increase in overuse injuries when young athletes perform the same repetitive stressful motions over and over. Pitching, tennis, weight training, even long swimming workouts can cause overuse trauma that may require surgery. If your kids play and train hard, visit orthoinfo.org or stopsportsinjuries.org. A message from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons and the American Orthopedic Society for Sports Medicine.
Game on! Game on!
Congratulations, folks. You've made it to the second half of the College Football X. It's the OSG Sports College Football Podcast, where we talk about everything going on in the great big world of college football. In the first half of the show, we kind of went through the week that was and paid our respects to legendary coach Vince Dooley. Guys, before we look ahead to next week, a couple of things that kind of came out of this week's games that were a little bit concerning. We didn't really get into the Michigan State game when we were going through the previous weekend's games, but something very disturbing happened at the end of the game. As video circulated of a large group of Michigan State football players trying to pound the ever-loving bleep bleep out of a Michigan player who just happened to find himself walking through the tunnel in the same place that they were. Not a good look for Michigan State. Not a good look at all.
No.
I'd have to say it's also not a good look for Michigan because how long has that stadium been open? Forever?
Yeah.
They haven't figured out that you put the losing team, if you've only got one tunnel, I don't know how they haven't built a second path. That you don't the other schools I've been to have a divider, people go down. Schools with one, you put the losing team down first, you wall off the winning team because they usually want to stand out there and take pictures and everything else. But like, how do you do that? There was some bad blood going on during the game. There was a D lineman that was talking a lot during the game and apparently continued talking. But that's all secondhand stuff. But like, how do you not have this figured out by now?
Mm-hmm.
It's not even like that was the first incident this year. It happened previously this year at the same venue.
Yep.
Yeah, they still come out of midfield, right? That tunnel there.
Yeah, single tunnel, both teams.
it's-
The locker rooms are close to each other as well.
Right. I think that's been a persistent issue. Gosh, even before our time, where the two teams are interacting like that, and maybe this is where push comes to shove with Michigan. Although when was that stadium built in the 1910s, 1920s? I mean, how much more can you do to retrofit it for another tunnel? So something's going to have to cooler heads need to prevail, and some policy needs to be put into place as to you can't have the opposing teams interacting, especially when you've got the two universities hate each other. If you know anything about Michigan State, it's not pretty.
Big brother, little brother.
Yeah, and they've had some battles like that on the basketball floor too. So it isn't just relegated to the football. But that was an ugly scene. Marty, I think you're right. Nobody looks good here. So we'll see what comes out of it.
Last renovation was in 2010 for $226 million. And you still have the one tunnel. But I think to Marty's point, what you've got to do in a situation like this is you literally have to send the visiting team or the losing team who wants to leave first. They go. And we've seen it all in smaller environments where we've got the one tunnel there. And it is literally, coaches are assisting in this process. Officials are assisting in this process, making sure that the visiting team goes first. Visiting team goes first. Nothing happens. It is a clear path. The umbrella is expanded over the top of the runway to keep folks from really throwing things. And that first team, the visiting team, gets the shot to go on their own down the tunnel and around the corner and into their locker room. But no, you've got to have chaos. And so, of course, when you have chaos, you have stupidity, and it happens again.
Yeah, like Ohio State, that got solved back with Tressel with the team goes down to the end zone and sings Carmen, Ohio to the student section.
Yeah.
That takes the entire team, puts them away in one corner, and everybody can get out while they're gathering for that.
Part of the problem with this one apparently was the Michigan player who, at least in the story that I read about it, wasn't identified, kind of wandered away. Most of the Michigan squad stayed out on the field after the game ended for a few minutes while the Spartans walked their way back into the locker room. But one player didn't, and that's the guy who got pounded.
Yeah, I think he had his nose broken. I think in the post-game presser, Harbaugh mentioned that he just called it a nasal issue, I believe.
Okay.
Coach speak for a broken nose.
Yeah. But I mean,
Harbaugh's gonna Harbaugh.
It's got to be.
Issue.
But if your coaching staff or you're part of the day staff, you've got to be vigilant in that situation. You literally have to keep track of everybody. Yes, I know it's like herding cats, but still, you've got to be vigilant in that situation to make sure that one person doesn't get through. Yes, I know it's like trying to catch water with an open hand, but you've got to make sure that this stuff does not happen.
Speaking of things that should not happen, there was another ugly off the field incident at the Georgia-Florida game this weekend down in Jacksonville, where reportedly there were multiple incidents involving some anti-Semitic phrases, tributes to Kanye, that crazy nut job Kanye West, and even there was one photo that showed a sheet hanging from an overpass.
Pleasant. Jeez.
Yeah. And it was bad enough that both the University of Florida and the University of Georgia, along with the city of Jacksonville, felt compelled to issue an apology and make a statement against everything that represents. This may be teetering a little bit toward politics, but there's no room in the world for anything like this, period, politics or not. college football or not.
Did they catch any of those people yet?
Haven't seen.
Not that I am aware of.
Haven't heard anything. No.
I'd have to think there's better causes in the world to rally around than Kanye West.
And better security and better security in these situations that can understand, okay, that doesn't need to be there. Let's take care of it. You know, instead of watching a football game or whatever, if you need to have more security, follow the light source, take care of it, take them into custody. None of that should ever be happening in any kind of public forum, but there should be at least some way to track down who did it in real time when it's there. How security doesn't notice this and social media does, I don't know. But there's got to be a way to track that stuff down.
Or at least be quick enough to turn a spotlight that's on the stadium towards what's being projected on to wash it out.
Yes.
Bad stuff all the way around.
Yes.
Guys, we got to look ahead. We got a busy week of games coming up now. The college football playoff poll is going to come out this week. It's going to show one of three teams in the number one spot. We know who those three teams are.
Yeah.
Either Ohio State, the University of Georgia, or the University of Tennessee. And as it turns out, two of those teams are going to be playing this coming weekend in the game of the century.
Ohio State's going to play Tennessee?
Yeah.
Not for a couple of weeks.
Georgia, Tennessee. Volunteers make the trip down to Athens. Game day will be there. Most of the college football universe will be there. It's the big game. 3:30 afternoon kick on CBS. Does Tennessee have a shot at this game? I think they do.
They've been like steadily climbing and gaining. I mean, you could see the swagger they're playing with. After that huge win, like some people fall off and other people are like, all right, let's get this train moving.
Yeah.
They're getting the train moving. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, we all know SEC bias is real. Ohio State's probably going to drop to 3 and they'll be 1 and 2. Just get the ratings up for that game.
Of course.
Make them even higher. I mean, they're going to be through the roof, but
I'll say you haven't been here the last 2 weeks. I'll tell you, Marty, what I've been saying for the last couple of weeks, and I still have Ohio State as the best team in the country, with these two as 2 and 3.
Yeah, but Big Ten's the Big Ten, and they don't have they're not viewed the same way as the SEC. So, yeah. I mean, every other year of the playoffs, an SEC team will have a quality loss. I don't know how that is even a thing, but a quality loss.
Alabama
lost. Okay, they're going to drop to 2.
Alabama, yeah.
Yeah,
or they'll drop to 5, knowing that there's going to be a game that they will win that will bring them back up into the discussion, into the Final Four. Or they'll go to 3, so you don't have 2 SEC teams playing each other until the final. Gee, why does that happen? I'm surprised.
No, it's almost like the network that owns the channel that they play on and owns the championships may have some sort of influence.
You think?
Oh, what? No.
Well, when the polls released this week, the first playoff poll, the top 4 teams are, and you can spin them in any order, but it's going to be Tennessee, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan. Yep. Those are going to be your top 4 coming out of the chute. And they're probably going the playoff committee probably wants a 1-2 matchup between Tennessee and Georgia. So I wouldn't be shocked if Georgia is 1, Tennessee's 2, or Tennessee's 1, Georgia's 2. It's irrelevant right now because
they're going to play.
To me, those are the 4 teams that are going to be there. As far as the Georgia-Tennessee game, whoever controls the line of scrimmage, and I think both teams are outstanding at it, will dictate the terms of the game. Then I go look at the quarterback matchup. Stetson Bennett is still playing well. He's got some great support pieces there. Hendon Hooker is just at a couple of levels above Stetson Bennett. That's where I kind of give Tennessee the edge. But again, they're playing between the hedges, and that's a whole different deal for Tennessee because I don't think they've been in that kind of atmosphere yet. So let's see how they handle it. But I'm going with Tennessee in this one because I think they are just the hottest team in college football right now. They've got the best quarterback in college football, in my opinion, right now. And I think they're due.
They're hot.
I have to agree with you. They're just they have so much momentum going with them right now, and they've got the quarterback play.
I will give you the X factor for this game, which really isn't going to be much of an X factor, I don't think, because everybody knows who he is.
Yeah.
2 words: Brock Bowers.
Brock Bowers.
The dude is unstoppable.
Yep.
Well, I mean,
You
think
see that
about
catch he made the
yeah.
yesterday or Saturday afternoon against Florida, that touchdown catch.
Think about the matchup problems that Bowers and Washington give you on for any defense. And right now, just so everyone knows, I mean I'm going to go Tennessee covers, Georgia wins.
Yeah, I'm with you on
I'm
that.
going to say Tennessee covers, but Georgia wins in this one. That's what I'm looking at right now. I think it'll be tight, and I think that CBS will enjoy every single minute of this one because it will live up to all of the hype.
And we'll be lucky if it's over by 8 o'clock, which would make it a 4.5-hour game.
Check. Absolutely. Oh, and by the way, secondary ticket market for this one, to get in the door, your get-in price on the secondary market, $538 as we're talking right now. Just get-in price, $538.
And the juice box line is -9 Georgia.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's a big number. It's going to be. I think it's less than 7. I think that 9 gets cut in half by the time.
Yeah, I think they're just trying to drive
Drive
the line a little bit, get things evened out a little more.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. I think you're right on. I think that 9 is entirely too much. But I'll take that 9 and run with it with Tennessee, and say that they cover, no question.
Another good SEC matchup this weekend, guys. Alabama takes the trip down to Death Valley to play a surprisingly improved LSU team.
LSU gets the cold spritz of water in the face. I think Alabama takes care of this one.
I don't. I like LSU in this one. I think they found themselves. A quarterback at least. And I think Brian Kelly has finally put his stamp on this team. He's put some discipline into them. And after the performance I saw against Ole Miss, that wasn't an Ed Orgeron LSU team. That's a Brian Kelly team. And I like LSU in this game. I think it's going to be tight. It's going to make both fans very nervous. But I think LSU pulls it off. By the way, it's a night game in Baton Rouge. Mm-hmm. Come on. They may have their second earthquake.
Yeah, we talked in the first half of the show about a place where going to a stadium where they've had all night to party and drink and consume
to enjoy themselves. Yeah.
Yes, I've worked a few games there. They're tuned up to a whole nother level. Now I like LSU. I love the people down there. I like the team, but Kelly just craps himself in big games,
mm-hmm.
and you're gonna have a pissed off Nick Saban as well. Mm. So I'm always gonna take it. I'm going to take angry Saban over any Kelly.
Correct. Right there with you.
Interesting game here for you, Wilkie.
Uh-oh.
The 23rd ranked
Liberty in Arkansas?
What universe are we in where we're talking about a ranked Liberty team coming into Fayetteville to play the Arkansas Razorbacks?
Well, I mean, this is the second head scratcher game for me with the Hogs because they played BYU in Provo and turned out to be an okay trip. They had a pretty dominant win out there. But let's salute Hugh Freeze, what he's done at Liberty, and is he still auditioning for an SEC job? I know he just signed that extension, but it's got a workable buyout. Arkansas is finally playing well. I thought they played excellent against Auburn. KJ Jefferson, it was sorry, John, but Rocket Sanders has been the X factor for them. So I think he still leads the SEC in rushing. I haven't seen Liberty yet. I'm just curious to see if they've seen a back of that caliber. And a quarterback that is 255, 260 pounds with an arm. So I think Arkansas holds their own. They win by 2 touchdowns simply because of the way they've been playing the last few years and the weapons they have.
Yeah, that's the number right now currently with juice boxes. And hey, Wilkie, look at it this way. At least Arkansas will play an SEC coach this upcoming Saturday because they sure as hell didn't play one last Saturday.
And I'm hearing rumors that one particular coach may be at that SEC school.
Yikes.
One other game that jumps off the board for me, and I'll throw it to you guys to talk about games that you like, and that's a game in South Bend, Indiana. The undefeated number 5 ranked Clemson Tigers make the trip back up to Indiana to face Notre Dame, who's they've played much better here the last few weeks. I haven't been impressed with Clemson, even though they've won their games. I'm not sure that they're necessarily the 5th best team in the country. Would not be surprised to see Notre Dame take this one.
I got Clemson in this one. I still think that Marcus Freeman is still trying to learn the landscape, and I've got to go with Clemson here. And then you'll have Dabo Swinney after the game talk about how tough it was to go up against a tough and improving Notre Dame team. He'll say all the nice things about Marcus Freeman. Right now, Clemson, it's within the margin, so basically it's a push. Clemson right now, early juice boxes are at a -3.5 on the road. I think Clemson wins by a touchdown.
That Notre Dame win over Syracuse showed me more about Syracuse than Notre Dame.
Yeah,
a lot of smoke in the mirrors with Syracuse, but Clemson still has an elite defense. It really depends on if DJU is starting or not. They still have the weapons offensively. I don't know. Clemson's been pretty impressive to me the last few games they've played. So I think Clemson wins this one pretty easily, to be honest with you. I just don't think Notre Dame, has the talent, and I think I agree with you, John. Marcus Freeman is still kind of figuring things out as a major college head coach at Notre Dame, which is hard to do.
Yeah, and going back to your favorite place on the football field, it's the trenches, and Clemson's going to be dominant there.
Exactly.
Notre Dame just needs to get, Freeman's a good recruiter. He needs to get a little bit more, some more of his guys in there. He's still playing with people he didn't necessarily recruit. Not on the defensive side, he did, but he needs to get the team a little bit more in his image.
Any other games that jump off the board to you guys here before we wrap things up this week?
Marty, what do you think? What's on your mind for next week?
Okay, as I like to do, the smaller schools. Middle of the week, it's fun to watch football. You got Maction going on.
Yes,
that's right. You do.
The best dollar value right now for Maction is Wednesday night with Central Michigan, Northern Illinois. Tickets can be had for $3.
Oh, awesome.
The spread's only 4, so it should be a close game. Unfortunately, both teams are 2-6.
So it's a higher spread than ticket cost to get it for your get-in price, is what you're saying.
You are correct. You can make your money back.
I was going to say, if the price is any lower, they'd be paying you to come.
Then
we need a road trip Thursday night to lovely DeKalb, Illinois.
Now, the one that's more scenic and a very beautiful campus to go to, Buffalo at Ohio, those can be had for $5.
Okay.
Spread on this one's only 1.5, and both teams are 5-3, so this could actually be a good game, and this is one I'll probably watch on TV Tuesday.
Okay.
All right.
Wilkie, what about you?
I'm looking at if we're going to go the small school route, we're going to look at App State and Coastal Carolina at the Teal Turf on Thursday night. I'm sorry. Yeah, it is the Teal Turf. Sorry, I got distracted there.
Belt power. Sunbelt power.
Yeah, we like a little good Sunbelt action.
Nothing wrong with the Fun Belt.
5-3 versus a 7-1 team.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. We love the belt. And then UConn UMass on Friday night.
Bowl eligibility on the line for Jim Mora. I think he gets it.
Things
in East Hartford.
Never thought we'd be saying.
UMass is awful. That hasn't changed.
Marty, they should pay us to go to that game.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm taking a look to see if any of these are negative. Like get $5, get a Wendy's $5 gift card, or
There
those
you
McDonald's gift certificates we used to get as kids that had the little painting on them.
Yes.
I could go for one of those.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
That game's going for $7, and UConn's favored by 14.
See, so that's where you need
It should be.
you need to get your $10 gift card from your local restaurant and then go in the door for $7. So that way you still make out for a couple of hamburgers from a drive-through by having that as your game.
And one more that sticks out, and this blows my mind that it's not even thought of. It's an
Yeah.
afterthought. Florida State at Miami.
Yep.
You said
Well,
that.
after what Miami did this past week, why would it be a primary thought of mine?
I mean, it just blows my mind. I mean, especially when I was working with the ACC, that was like appointment television, and everybody's looking forward to when they were playing. And now it's like, hey, Florida State's playing Miami
Yeah.
in Miami.
Well, when one's 4-3 and the other's 3-4, and one set the world back a good couple of generations with their offense last week, I completely understand it. And depending on where you get your juice boxes, the line started at either 6 or 7.5. So think about it somewhere in there.
And don't you think it would fall another level or two if Beth Mowins is calling the game?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Oh, there's nobody worse. And I don't want to sound sexist or anything. She can't pronounce anybody's name. I don't care what gender you are. Take out the pronunciation guide. It should be right there next to your line sheet. I mean, they make those cheat sheets for a reason. It should be right there with your depth chart.
The odds of her calling that game are pretty slim since it's a primetime game on ABC.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So is that?
We're probably getting Sean McDonough.
Yeah. Sean McDonough. Yeah. Sean McDonough would be doing that one. Yeah. So I guess since you picked that one, I'll go with the one that affects the other half of this household. And the questions are, will Auburn have an athletic director? And will that athletic director fire Brian Harsin, who made the local media wait an hour and a half before he decided to come in and be condescending to them all in his post-game press conference on Saturday after getting whacked in a nearly empty stadium by Arkansas, the game that Wilkie watched on TV, the game that I watched in person, and saw a lot of hate watching from a lot of Auburn people. So those are the two questions on the Plains right now. The number's at 12.5. Will there be a new AD? And will he be coming from Starkville?
Or the other question about that game, will anybody outside people in a certain mile radius around eastern Alabama really give a shit?
True. Yeah. Well, everybody in eastern Mississippi and northeast Mississippi will care. But yes, the subplot in this household and in the Southeastern Conference about when does the buyout become manageable enough at $15 million or less? I would have said Texas A&M, but then I would have gotten into a discussion about a quitter, and it would not have been pretty, and you would have had to bleep the whole thing. Go.
Now, on coacheshotseat.com, and I don't know if they've updated this to reflect yesterday's outcomes,
yes,
but Brian is number 2, and A&M is number 3.
So who's number 1?
Who's number 1?
Jeff Scott, South Florida.
Jeff Scott has been the perennial contender for number 1 for quite some time. That's weird. Okay. Well, but the thing is that the firm would have to come up with $86 million to dispose of the quitter there at ATM.
Even they don't have that money.
Well, Shell turned a $15 billion profit last quarter, so I'm sure that the firm could probably talk to some of their buddies over at Shell and come up with the money.
Yeah, but they spent the majority of that money on those kids they've just recently suspended.
That's true. It's true.
It's
both
Texas,
to get them out of jail and to recruit them.
Mm-hmm.
It's Texas. It's oil. They'll come up with the money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So okay. On that note, I'm going to put a wrap on things here because we got to get moving on with the day. Guys, thanks for joining this week. We had a lot of ground we had to cover, and we did cover it. I think so, or at least I hope we did. Tune in next week when we'll find out who really is number 1 and number 2, or at least in the rankings, number 1 and number 2. It doesn't necessarily mean they're the best 2 teams, but It's college football, so when has it ever mattered?
Sometimes it's better to be number one.
Michigan's always number 2 in my opinion.
There it was. I was waiting for it.
I serve it up to you on a platter, sir.
I'm not ashamed of that comment.
Send us home.
Say goodbye, everybody. For OSG Nelson and OSG Wilkie, Brother Marty, I am Brother Phil, OSG Phil. We are the Online Sports Guys. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a great week. Hopefully, we will catch you again next week.
Please like and subscribe.